I'm a big fan of going in to watch films sometimes not knowing a single thing about them. Who's in it? What it's about? Who directed it? Just pressing play in complete ignorance other than perhaps knowing the title. There's something special about letting a movie simply present itself to you step by step and being completely drawn in without any preconceived notions. It's an entirely different experience than if you go in full of expectations, and now the film has to either meet or go against those. And that's exactly how I saw this week's film. Missing Child Videotape. And yes, that's what it's called in both English and Japanese. If you want the too long didn't watch, so you can stop this video, go find the film yourself and watch it without knowing anything about it like I did, then I'll just say, yes, it's very good. It's like a Kowabana film. Go watch it. But if you've already seen it yourself or you'd like to know more first, then hang around. Let's talk in depth about it. There will be, of course, spoilers all throughout this video, but I'll do my best to make note of when I'm talking about something important, like the ending. So, let's get into it. Missing Child Videotape came out in 2024, and from what I can tell, it was based on a winning short film from a 2022 Japanese horror festival. It's directed by Kondo Ryota, a burgeoning director who has just started working in the horror field over the last few years. This film is a rather small project with only a few actors in limited locations, so he's also credited as the original writer and editor as well. The full movie script was written by Kaneko Suzuyuki, and Shimizu Takashi serves as executive producer, if you care about that sort of thing. But let's get to the interesting part. The story. As the film opens, we're told we're in the year 2015. Hey, I still live in Japan at this point. There's a boy who's lost on a mountain, and a young man from the search and rescue team soon finds him. The boy is intrigued by the bell he's wearing, which he tells him is to keep bears away. The kid mishears him, thinking he said akuma, or demons, rather than kuma, bears. Who knows, perhaps it's for both. At any rate, he gives the boy the bell and they leave. As they're walking on a dark road back to safety, the boy calls him Nii-chan, or Big Brother. The young man stops and clearly looks troubled. The boy continues ringing the bell in the darkness and, after hesitating, they continue on their way while we're left with a slow, lingering shot of the empty, or maybe not so empty, forest beside them. It's quite the effective setup, and in numerous ways this introduction lets you know what we're getting into. There's very little dialogue, and very few scene cuts. The camera is left to linger on the actors' faces, sometimes for an uncomfortably long time, and it does the same with the surroundings as well, leaving you with this weird, almost uncanny feeling, like nothing here is quite right. It's just a lost boy in the woods and a rescue member who has found him, but the way they are framed, the way their minuscule dialogue is delivered, and even the expressions on their faces leave you anxious. What's really going on? Is everything truly what it seems? Combined with the almost complete lack of sound, other than that bell, a tense atmosphere is being created that the film will continue to slowly ramp up until you don't think you can take it anymore. We soon cut to our search and rescue guy arriving home to find his roommate watching news of his rescue on TV. Our rescue guy is Keita, his roommate Tsukasa. They appear to be quite close, almost brotherly in how they treat each other, and Tsukasa informs Keita that his mother sent him yet another package while he was out. Inside, he finds various items of clothing and, oddly, a videotape. Tsukasa is immediately creeped out by the tape and physically reacts to it upon touch. The mood in the apartment is soured, and Keita shoves the box in the closet with presumably the other boxes his mother has been sending him. Yet, he seems torn, and after a few moments, asks if they have a tape player in the apartment. Then, we're introduced to our third main character, Mikoto, a journalist from the Gunma Shimpo newspaper. She notices Tsukasa leaving for work as she heads to their apartment to ask a few questions about Keita's recent rescue. But when nobody answers the door, she quietly tails Tsukasa instead. He's an observant fellow and calls her out, and she reveals that she's investigating, well, Keita. 13 years ago, his younger brother also went missing in the mountains. Clearly, she thinks there's some connection between that incident and his volunteer work now. But upon hearing that, Tsukasa points out something interesting. That personal alarm she's carrying, it's no doubt useless, as it's not a stalker that's bothering her. He can see things. Those sorts of things. As she stands there feeling quite uncomfortable, he points out that nobody likes people prying into their personal lives, but gives her his work card should she ever want help with the thing following her. And so, this is the meat of our story. Keita's younger brother went missing 13 years ago. He now lives with Tsukasa, who can see ghosts. And for some reason, Keita's mother sent him a videotape that Tsukasa had a very immediate and visceral reaction to simply by touching it. And now, a journalist is investigating Keita for some reason we don't yet know as well. The young men find a tape player to watch the video, and Tsukasa informs Keita of his run-in with the journalist. In return, Keita tells Tsukasa that yes, his brother did go missing 13 years ago. He's sorry he never mentioned it. Tsukasa gets up to leave so Keita can watch the video in peace, but Keita asks him to stay. He wants him to watch it too, considering his ability to see things. The video, being filmed by Keita as a child, shows his younger brother, Hinata, playing with their father at home. It then cuts to Keita exploring a mountain. Hinata appears and asks him to play with him. He tells him to go away. Keita wants to play alone. Next, we see him filming inside some building he has found on the mountain. Hinata appears again and points out that Puyo Puyo is here. Sadly, he's not talking about the video game, but rather something Keita can't see. Keita suggests they play hide and seek, and Hinata disappears. Keita explores the building looking for him, eventually spotting him at the end of a hall. But when he goes to get him, he's gone, seemingly vanished into thin air. Keita panics and runs. Hinata was never seen again. But what makes all this even weirder is that when the police went looking for him, they weren't even able to find the building. There was no trace of any building ever existing on that mountain, even though Keita's video is literal evidence of what happened. So, where on earth were the boys playing? Back in the present timeline of 2015, things get even weirder when Mikoto meets with Tsukasa once more and questions why he gave her number to Keita's dad. Tsukasa is rather confused, and Mikoto points out that Keita's father called her the night before. It wasn't much of a conversation, but he asked her to take good care of his son. But here's the thing. Keita's father is dead. He died last year. So, there's no way he could have called her, and Tsukasa certainly didn't give a dead man her phone number. At this point, we're roughly 25 minutes into the film with a decent number of mysteries building. The biggest, of course, is what happened to Hinata. That's the entire driving force of the movie. But on the side, we also have the journalist investigating this story, and all the strange things seemingly happening to her too. Also, what on earth is going on with Keita's parents? Keita decides it's time to pay his mother a visit and tell her directly to stop sending him his father's stuff. That's what's in all those boxes. He doesn't want to see her, but it's best done in person either way. Tsukasa agrees to join him so he doesn't have to do it alone. It's quite a drive, and when they arrive, the house appears to be empty. Inside, they find boxes of freshly printed leaflets. His mother is still looking for Hinata 13 years later. Tsukasa refuses to go upstairs, and the entire house clearly overwhelms him. Keita doesn't seem to find his mother upstairs and reveals a little more of his family history. His parents were never able to move on, and every year they still celebrated Hinata's birthday like he was still with them. They never outright said anything, but he knew they blamed him for his brother's disappearance. They then decide to have a quick look around Mount Mashido, where Hinata disappeared. Somehow, Keita is convinced he still might find his brother there. As they stop to rest, Keita spots a blue jacket in the distance, just like what his brother was wearing when he disappeared. But as he's about to run off to follow the figure, they find something else. Discarded funeral urns everywhere. The police determine it to be illegal dumping, to the shock of everyone, I'm sure, and one of the officers mentions that they still have Hinata's case open. They're still investigating his disappearance even now. And so, it's around this halfway point of the film that we start to realize at least a little of what's going on. It's the mountain. Mount Mashido is, to put it simply, not a good place. Mikoto talks to her boss and discovers that he was also working on an article about that same mountain a while ago. A mountaineering club from Meiyō University went mysteriously missing while climbing it. Also, on an interesting note, if you pause on the boss's notes during this part, it actually gives us quite a bit of information that's otherwise not stated in the movie. For example, we can see that Mount Mashido used to be called Mount Ouma, and it's located in Nagano Prefecture. This is consistent with Keita finding the missing boy at the start of the film in neighbouring Gunma Prefecture, and them having to travel for a while to reach his old childhood home, which apparently is in Nagano. The notes also tell us the mountain is 582 meters high, and it takes 3 to 4 hours on the trails to reach the top. This makes it popular with beginners, and all the more weird that an entire mountaineering club would simply disappear from it, never to be seen again. The only thing that was ever found from these missing club members was their recorder, and the tape they recorded on their way up. It describes their journey up the mountain and also the ruins they visited. But the tape suddenly cuts off while they're inside. And of course, the tape was found on the mountainside, not inside a building. At this point, if you're familiar with Japanese horror tropes, one thing in particular is probably standing out right now. Mayoiga. Those buildings that don't seem to exist in the same time and space as us, but rather can appear and disappear at will. It would seem that Mount Mashido is home to a Mayoiga, but is that all that's really going on here? As Keita and Tsukasa find pretty much the only lodgings in town to stay at for the night, Mikoto FaceTimes Tsukasa to tell him of her findings. At the same time, Keita gets a lore drop from the son of the inn owner. It seems that Mount Mashido isn't just a beginner's hiking mountain. It's a place people go to in order to throw things away. What types of things? Kami-sama. Religious artifacts. Belongings of the deceased. Human ashes. He tells a weird story of his grandmother getting her first period and throwing away her stained underwear on the mountain in shame. And she never had another one again. But if that's true, then how did she give birth to his mother? It's all just too weird. Tsukasa goes back to Keita's childhood house alone, and there, the TV turns on. It plays a video of the family celebrating Hinata's 7th birthday, even though he went missing when he was 5. This tracks with what Keita said earlier, but naturally, it creeps him the hell out. It's also here, at the 1 hour and 11 minute mark, that we finally get our first honest-to-God scare of the movie. As I mentioned earlier, the introduction really sets the mood and feel of the movie. Long shots without cuts. Uncomfortably long silences. Incredibly minimal use of background music. Angles and tracking shots that often leave you feeling tense, constantly looking around in the background to find the ghost you know is lurking there, etc. I've seen people compare it to Kurosawa Kiyoshi's works, like Cure and Pulse, and I don't think it's a terrible comparison. This movie makes you tense, and you're constantly looking for the supernatural that the movie repeatedly tells you exists, and yet refuses to show you. And then it happens. The long wait finally pays off in an honestly rather scary moment, considering how long you've been waiting for it to happen. A woman in all black, who's honestly way too tall to be normal, appears behind our main character in the corner of the room, almost like one of those black stains on the wall in Pulse, until she moves and gets closer and closer, seemingly getting taller as well, as she reminds Keita that tomorrow it's Hinata's birthday. Yes, our ghost is Keita's mother. She's dead too, and this might be one of my new favourite ghost reveals in a film. You've been waiting for it all this time, and when it finally happens, over 70 minutes in, it's just as weird and uncanny and frightening as you'd hope. The way they never clearly show her face, which appears rather blurry as she gets closer, but also her almost unnatural height from a distance, with her head reaching over the window at first, and then standing well above the ceiling beams as she approaches, is a perfect example of simple, understated horror. It also finally confirms without a doubt that yes, this film is actually dealing with the supernatural. This cuts to Tsukasa finding her body on the 2nd floor. She's holding a photo of her 2 sons and has clearly been there for at least a few days now. Again, there's some unspoken horror as we, the viewers, realize that Keita went up to the 2nd floor alone earlier that day and returned claiming to have seen nothing. What's really going on? At this point, I'd like to point out that throughout the movie thus far, I don't know if it was a deliberate choice or not, but at least to me, Keita always came across as rather odd. Shady, even. That opening scene where he finds the boy in the forest, the way he's framed, the way he speaks, the lingering looks on his face that seem to be devoid of emotion. I was left wondering if he was, perhaps, the bad guy. There's so much mystery going on in this film, and Keita only ever has this stony expression on his face. As the camera lingers on it for an uncomfortably long time, your brain is left to wonder why. It's framed like filming the bad guy, who then grins wickedly for the audience when the other characters turn away. But he never grins. He never gives us anything. We don't know what he's thinking. It adds to the tension and mystery. Was Keita somehow actively involved in his brother's disappearance? Or was this young man just so horribly broken by that horrific experience in his youth that he no longer has emotions left to give? He's terrified when he sees the ghost of his mother, but he's not shocked. Did he really see her dead body upstairs? If so, why did he act like he didn't? Keita is an enigma, another part of the complex puzzle. At any rate, Mikoto and Keita finally meet as we head into the final half hour of the film. She brings the Mountaineering Club's recording with her, and she thinks that if Keita uses that and his own memories, they can track down this building that doesn't exist. The Mayoiga, if you will. Tsukasa then calls her and mentions finding Keita's deceased mother. He also points out that Keita should have seen her as well when he went up, but it's also possible that he didn't. After all, he has been under the influence of the mountain for a while now. She has to stop him if he tries to go up. But as he's saying this, static fills the phone, and instead, Mikoto hears Tsukasa's voice telling her to take Keita to the mountain, right now. The mountain's influence is at work once again. It's also here that we get our second scare of the movie, the type of scare that I'm most fond of. The ghostly figure lurking in the background. The sort of thing that, if you're like me, you've been looking for this whole time. So to see it again, it's a nice payoff. Thank you, Keita's deceased mother. At any rate, it's endgame. Keita heads up the mountain in the dark by himself, cassette tape in hand as the Mountaineering Club record their walk. Mikoto gets another creepy call from Keita's deceased father, and then Tsukasa finally shows up. They have to find Keita. There will be ending spoilers from here on out, so if you'd rather not know, maybe watch the movie first and then come back. Now, this they do rather easily, all things considered, and they find the now abandoned cassette tape on the ground in front of a large abandoned building. Yes, they've somehow found themselves right in front of what they were looking for all this time. It actually exists, and Keita must be inside. Of course, once inside, Tsukasa has a hell of a time, as this place is overloading his sense for the supernatural. And if you're eagle-eyed, you might just spot Puyo Puyo lurking off to the side as well. Our heroes are then separated once more as Tsukasa chases after Keita, and Mikoto is literally held back by a ghostly force. When Tsukasa catches up to Keita, he claims to have finally found Hinata. Of course, Hinata still looks exactly the same as the day he went missing, so there's no way it could possibly be him 13 years later. And then, Tsukasa drops a big fat truth bomb on all of us. Hinata is dead. He knows this, because the first time he met Keita, Hinata's spirit was right there next to him. He's always been there with him, but Tsukasa never mentioned anything because, well, that's hardly gonna go down well, is it? And as the camera cuts to a close-up of Keita's face, we finally get our best look at, presumably, Puyo Puyo. The creature, spirit, God, whatever it is that seems to be behind all this. Wobbling and swaying behind him, almost like kune-kune come to life. Puyo Puyo means something soft and jelly-like, and so we, the viewers, realize in this moment that the white shadowy figure behind Keita, the figure he was never able to see, was what his younger brother saw. After all, he called it Puyo Puyo because, as a 5-year-old, that was the only vocabulary he had to describe the strange thing he was seeing in this abandoned building lost in the mountains. Keita is still unable to see it, but finally accepts that, yes, his brother is gone. His entire family is now gone. And with that, a bright light flashes. Downstairs, Mikoto is freed from the ghostly force holding her, and Tsukasa finds himself watching young Keita filming and looking for his brother. He seems to have gone back in time and is watching the disappearance take place. Unfortunately, he finds Hinata's body lying at the bottom of some stairs. The boy appears to have tripped while playing hide and seek and died. At the same time, Keita in the present finds the remains of Hinata's jacket on that very same spot, and for the first time all movie, lets his emotions overwhelm him as he screams and cries for his lost brother. By the time he filmed him standing at the end of the hall, the place where he disappeared, Hinata was already dead. And Tsukasa finds himself back at that same spot again, apparently trapped in a loop of watching young Keita experience the loss of his younger brother over and over again. 3 months pass. Tsukasa is still missing, and although Mikoto never got to print her story, she's still working on it in her own time. She now has Keita's video as well, and we can see the date on her screen says March 9th, 2016. This means that much of the movie likely took place around the end of 2015, for what that's worth. Remember how at the start of the movie, Tsukasa mentioned that whatever was following her likely wasn't a stalker? Well, it seems she's still being followed by something, as she turns around at her desk, sensing the gaze of something on her once again. Back at Mount Mashido, the son of the inn owner is looking at Hinata's missing person leaflet posted at the foot of the mountain. It's new, meaning someone has replaced it recently. He also senses someone watching him, and we get a first-person view of what appears to be someone, or something, recording him from behind some nearby trees. He then disappears. Back at the apartment, Keita comes home from what appears to be another search and rescue, but this time, nobody greets him. He also senses someone watching him and turns around. "Tsukasa?" he asks, and we again see a first-person view of someone who appears to be recording him. Fade to black. So, what happened at the end? After all this, was the mystery of the mountain and the disappearing people finally solved? Well, yes and no. Remember, it's important to keep in mind that a lot of Japanese horror functions as a journey. It's not the destination that matters so much as the exploration of what happens on the way. We are given enough clues to reach a reasonable conclusion, but not everything is explained. Let's break down what we do know. Mount Mashido is a location in Nagano that locals have used for many decades, and probably centuries, to dispose of things both sacred and sacrilegious. In recent years, numerous people have gone missing on that mountain. So, as J-horror connoisseurs, we can assume that means the mountain has built up all sorts of bad vibes and energy from all the dumping, and is now spiritually quite the dangerous place. In December 2002, young Keita and Hinata somehow end up at the mountain. Maybe it was a family trip, as Hinata's missing persons poster says they were near the campgrounds, but who knows, it's never explained. Either way, the boys find themselves in a mysterious building, and inside, Hinata spots something that he can only describe as puyo puyo, soft and jelly-like. Keita can't see it. Before long, Hinata disappears. Now, 13 years later, we discover that numerous people have gone missing in that same area, including a girl from a mountaineering club who repeatedly told the others she felt like they were being watched. And then, after all that, Tsukasa, our resident spooky guy who can see ghosts, is also the only one of the trio to go missing again. The movie shows us at least 3 people who are able to see, or at least strongly sense, ghosts who are taken by the mountain. Hinata, the woman from the mountaineering club, and Tsukasa. Clearly, the mountain has a taste for those who are sensitive to the other side. Why? This the movie doesn't explain, but it's possible, as the ending shows us, that it does so to lure even more people in. Tsukasa appears to have the strongest sixth sense of the lot, and he wasn't just trapped in the abandoned building. He was straight up taken to another time period, much like Mafuyu in Fatal Frame 1, and directly shown the history of the place. The figure we never see at the end is filming both the son and Keita with an old video camera. Undoubtedly, the same one Keita himself was using as a child. We see Tsukasa stuck in a loop with young Keita and that camera. Put two and two together, and... With that being said, in traditional J-horror fashion, much of the whys and hows of the story are left up to you to decide. There's no fun in outright explaining every single little thing. Instead, enjoy the show, take it all in, marvel at the visuals, ruminate over the lore drops, use your knowledge of Japanese horror conventions, and let the pieces fall into place. That being said, it's also not like the movie is without inconsistencies. This was, after all, a short film turned into a 1 hour and 45-minute feature film. That brief original story was massively padded to meet that time. For example, Keita and Tsukasa finding the dumped urns on the mountain goes nowhere. You could maybe be generous and say, it's lore building. But it's screen time that just never goes anywhere or adds anything. It leads us to the police station where a police officer tells us he joined the force shortly before Hinata went missing, and they're still looking for him. Again, a revelation that doesn't go anywhere or do anything for the story. It's just a statement that exists and takes up time and doesn't add anything to the plot and is never followed up on again. And speaking of things never followed up on again, the bells. When we first see Keita, he's wearing a bell. These are generally worn when hiking in the mountains of Japan to keep bears away, although the kid seems to mishear him and thinks he says demons instead. The long deliberate shot on Keita's stony face appears to insinuate that maybe the kid isn't too far off the mark. We also see some other hikers later on wearing the bells, which again makes Keita perk up as he hears them. Yet, that's it. We just never really get anything from the bells ever again, and they don't play any important part in the plot. They are, in the end, just set dressing. Garnish, if you will. Not necessary for the meal, and they don't make much difference, but hey, here's a little something extra to make it look fancy, I guess. There's also some weirdness in the locations. Keita, Tsukasa, and Mikoto all seem to live in Gunma right now. But Mount Mashiro and Keita's childhood home are in Nagano. That's fair enough. But we're also told that Mount Mashiro is quite some distance from his family home. Yet they're constantly back and forth from it. And what on earth was Keita and his brother doing there as kids? There's no sign of their parents being around, nor any mention of why they're there in the first place. This mountain that's around an hour from their house, by the way. It might have been a trip, sure, but it's never mentioned. And the movie constantly treats the mountain as though it's right next door, but then oddly tells us that no, it's actually not that close. We gotta drive for a bit to get there. And perhaps the biggest confusion of all, just what was that abandoned building? The Mayoiga. We end the movie not knowing what it even is, nor the conditions that need to be met in order to find it, and what exactly the Puyo Puyo creature is after. Mikoto tells us there's no history of anything ever being built on that mountain, so it's not something that officially ever existed. Could it have been secretly built at some time in the past, and then discarded, like other things on the mountain? Then, the mountain claimed it as its own, using all those bad vibes and energy to turn that space into a Mayoiga situation. It's possible, but we get literally zero information on this location. It just exists to serve the plot and little more. Same with Puyo Puyo. No information. Just exists to have a reason for people to disappear and fear the mountain. That being said, whether these are heavy negatives are up to you. As a lore enjoyer, I love learning about things like this and how they came to be. But at the same time, it's not the end of the world. I still massively enjoyed the movie, even with the lingering mystery of what that location and what that creature were. But this is very much a slow build movie. The first ghost scene doesn't appear until we're around 2/3 of the way in. There are also no jump scares at all. Just a mastery of tension and looming dread that I honestly found impressive for a new director. If you like the idea of a low-budget Kurosawa Kiyoshi type film that reads like a decent, but not mind-blowing, knee-channel creepypasta, and all that entails, then hey, it's hard to look past this one. I'd also like to give a special shout out to the cinematographer for the great framing on so many scenes. The feeling that something is just slightly off, or a little wrong, or vaguely uncanny and thus unsettling, is very much thanks to that. It's very well done. But if you don't enjoy long lingering shots, an abundance of silence, and a movie taking a long time to set up, then maybe you won't enjoy this one either. But at the end of the day, I couldn't help but feel like I was watching a knee-channel scary story come to life. But I mean that in a good way. Some of my favorite Japanese horror has come from those bulletin boards, and this movie felt like one of those rare stories that is told so well that you're left thinking about it well after you've finished reading. But instead of reading text on a screen, we're treated to a carefully planned and carefully framed film instead. For many, I'm sure, that's the ideal way to experience a scary story. But what did you guys think of this one? If you've seen the film, let me know your thoughts below, good and bad, and I'll see you guys again next time.